Hey there everybody, Professor Cloud here. This is another getting started guide for Elden Ring. This time we are going to be focusing on an archer build. And let's jump right in and I'll talk through what is going to make up an archer build as we get started with a brand new game. An archer build is going to be focusing obviously primarily on the bows. However, if you watch any archer in any movie or read about any archer, every archer has a secondary weapon beyond their bow, whether it's a short sword, whether it's a dagger, whether it's something else entirely. So what we're going to be doing is building out an archer that primarily focuses on two different bow types, long bows and short bows, and then has a secondary weapon that they can use whether they're on horseback or out of a boss fight. You're going to still want to use your bows in boss fights. Now, based on the starting stats of the different classes, we're going to pick the samurai, which means that this is going to be very, very similar to my getting started guide for the true samurai build. And that's because we want the dexterity to be at a level where we can use a secondary weapon that is a somber weapon. That way we can focus all of our smithing stones for upgrades on the bows and only worry about upgrading the somber weapon with somber smithing stones. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the somber weapon that we're going to choose is available in early game, but it is not very good in mid to late game, so you may want to swap it out for something else. But to get you started, to get your collection set up from a smithing stone and somber smithing stone perspective, rune farming, and get yourself in the best position for that first big boss market, this is going to be a great way to get started. So we're just going to call this person Archer. And we'll go ahead and leave everything else alone. We should always choose the golden seed for your keepsake. If this is your first time playing or your second time playing, and you're fairly new to the game, you don't know where things are, that's what this guide is for. The golden seed is absolutely the best keepsake for those individuals. I'm not going to worry about anything else at this point. We'll do a little bit more of an in-depth view of the stats when we go and level up for our first time. Now, this guide is going to be made up of a number of different videos, each one of them in focusing on different sections. These first two are just getting you set up. The first two sections are collecting the right materials, not even focusing on leveling up at all, but just focusing on collecting runes, collecting materials, so that your weapons are at the right level. Because the weapon level is the most important thing with respect to damage. You are only going to get 1 to 3 extra points of damage each time you level up your primary stat. So in this case, it would be dexterity. And that's going to be dependent upon scaling, obviously, of the weapon. But still, usually 1 to 3 is the most you're going to get. Whereas if you go from +1 to +2 of a given weapon, you could get anywhere from 5 to 15 points of additional damage. Again, depending upon scaling, and sometimes even more. So let's go ahead and get moving. Now, I am going to go ahead and make a couple of quick changes here real quick. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. And that is, I am going to remove the shield. I'm going to leave the arrows the way that they are. And I'm going to put the bow as my secondary weapon for right now in the right hand. And then for this first boss, because you're meant to die anyway, I'm not going to even waste any arrows. Now, one thing to keep in mind with respect to the bows, you are going to have a much more difficult run than pretty much any other weapon because of damage output. there just isn't a lot of damage output with respect to the bows. But the bows do give you an option to use a couple of very interesting Ashes of War or skill weapon arts. The longbow comes by default with the Mighty Shot skill, and the short bow, which we'll pick up very early on, comes with the Barrage skill. And both of those are very important to have. They will absolutely help you in boss fights. So let's go ahead and put our... Okay, they're already there. We have already got a golden seed. But let's go ahead and deal with this tutorial area. Now, the first thing I highly recommend, as you start with this build, go ahead and use your katana. And you might go, well, Brian, we're doing or Professor, we're doing a archer build. Yes, but you only have 20 arrows to start with. And you'll run out very, very quickly. We will switch to the bow when it comes to the tutorial boss. But for these first few areas, or first few enemies, I am just going to worry about using the katana. Don't forget, we've got the golden seed, so let's go ahead and take care of using that. Add charge to flask. That's what the golden seeds are for. Keep in mind that it is not always going to be one seed per flask addition. Sometimes it's gonna go 1 1, 2 2, 3 3, and then I think it's 4s from that point on. Now, if you do want to two-hand your weapon, which obviously you will for the longbow, hit Y and then the right bumper, or left bumper if you're carrying it in your left hand. Alright, we're just going to sprint through here because of the archer up above. Grab me a rowan fruit. Crafting is going to be extremely important for archers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That will not always happen with the katana. The katana does not do a lot of poise damage. But do keep it in mind. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use that art that I was talking about. Or that skill. Because of that reason. That was 153 points of damage. Okay. Switch back to the sword. The jump attack will absolutely be your friend, even as an archer. Supposedly, the jump attack is harder for bosses and enemies to defend against. So for those enemies that do have a tendency to dodge out of the way, they may be able to, you might be able to get that shot off if you're jumping it. But that's going to be primarily for the short bow. I don't highly recommend it for the long bow. Alright, so we've got our first boss coming up. And what we're going to do is see if we can't use the Mighty Shot with this boss to get things started. And then we'll go from there and see how things go. Look at that. Very nice. Barely had to move an inch. That's how good the archer can be. But this is a tutorial boss. Let's be honest here. This is not what you should be expecting for every single boss fight. The other thing to keep in mind, and the reason why you're going to have, or I am going to have, two different bows, is because the short bow is much, much faster. You're not going to do as much damage, but you're going to be able to get a lot more arrows off in those short windows when you have attack options with a specific boss. The other reason you want both bows is because of the different skills. The barrage skill that I mentioned comes by default with the short bow. That skill is extremely difficult to find in the game, so having both bows gives you both of those skills right at the very beginning. There are some additional Ashes of War that you can find out in the world that are related to bows, but they are few and far between. The only two in particular that I would recommend are Sky Shot, and that's going to be when you are at distance and you've got a lot of enemies, or a big enemy that's part of a group that you want to get rid of, that kind of thing. The other one is, I think it's called Energy Shot, which is basically a magic arrow. So even if you don't have any magic arrows, those being called dwelling arrows, you will be able to get access to something like that with that particular Ash of War. Alright, so I'm going to skip talking to this guy. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head to that church right there, so that we can meet up with the merchant, and that's where we're going to start to talk about the different arrows that are going to be available, because that, along with the two different bow types, are your big changes in how you approach a fight. Let's see, let's drop down. By the way, those Roa fruits that we have been picking up are a craftable, something that can be used for craftable items, and specifically, once we get our horse, which is the main key for this first video, you will use the Roa fruits to create a craftable item that will heal your horse, because your horse can take damage just like you can. Alright, so make sure when you get to this church, you head to the front. There is a free rune right here. Excellent. Then head back here to the anvil to pick up your first smithing stone. You will need 2 to upgrade the longbow at least once. And then this is our first merchant.
Tarnished. I can see. And I can also see that you're not after my throat. Then why not purchase a little something? I am Carly, purveyor of fine goods.
So, let's take a look at the purchase window. In this purchase window, there are a few things to point out. The first is every merchant that you run into will carry arrows, standard arrows. 20 runes a pop. You can only carry 19 of them at a time. So, in this early part of the game, you're going to see I'm going to use my katana a lot more than you would expect because I can't afford to buy arrows. The second thing to point out is this crafting kit. This is what's going to allow us to craft things, including different arrow types. Now, one of the things that you will find in the article that is attached to this video series is that I have provided you with a list of all of the different requirements for crafting different arrow types. Not all arrow types, just the ones that you'll need to worry about. In addition to the crafting kit, which just allows you to craft it all, there are also these cookbooks. These are what provide the recipes for different types of things. So if we look at the Warrior's Cookbook 1, it gives us access to bone arrows. Warrior's Cookbook 2, nothing related to arrows. Now, you'll see here bone arrows. You can craft bone arrows. They don't do as much damage as the standard arrows. It's not worth crafting them. There are other types of arrows out in the world that are also sold by merchants. And one of the things that we will do in one of the last videos of the series is we are going to go through a very dangerous area of the world just so that we can get access to those merchants. One of them sells fire arrows, one of them sells poison arrows, so you'll never need to craft them. In addition, the bone arrows have a drop-off. The regular arrows do not. The bone arrows, no matter which kind you're using, do have a drop-off at around 50 feet, which also makes them much more difficult and requires you to stay closer to your enemy than you should really need to. So, as we go through this series, you're going to see me going to locations for no other reason than to talk to a merchant and get him on my map so that I can go back to him later and collect fire arrows. Now, the next thing that we're going to do in this video is we're going to go get our horse, get a few crafting materials, and then we're going to stop the video at Storm Hill Shack, and we'll pick up from there so that all we're going to do in the second video is picking up crafting materials. Or actually upgrade materials, excuse me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to pop the runes that I just picked up outside the church.
For now.
That gets me an extra 400. The reason I'm doing that is because I need 600 to buy the short bow. We're going to go do that first. But I'm going to use the 400 to buy some additional arrows. Okay, so now I've got 34.
Goodbye.
Alright. Now we're going to go down and buy the short bow. The short bow is 600 runes. And it is all the way down here at a merchant on the beach. Now, I could come back here and do it later if I wanted to, but I'd rather have it for the first area where we're really going to focus on killing people, in case I need that extra speed. So right down there is where we're going to be going. And specifically, we're going to be going around this corner and underneath of that arch. But first, we need to get down there. Now, the great thing about the maps in this game versus other FromSoft games is that you can warp at any time. So as soon as you find one of those sites of grace that we've been sitting at, you're going to be able to warp back there. So as soon as I buy my short bow, I will be able to warp back to the church, and we'll be in good shape. Alright, so let's make it over to that merchant that I just showed you, and then we'll warp back to the church and head to the location where we're going to get our horse and start our collecting. Now, for these guys, just run away. You are not ready to deal with them yet. They will be very easy later in the game. Trust me. Anytime you see butterflies, make sure to pick them up. They're also part of the crafting process.
What do you need? I don't want any...
So he has the short bow. He is the only one that I have found that actually sells the short bow. So we've got that now.
All done? Well, be on your way then.
And we're going to head back to the church. Oh, I forgot to sit at the... Okay. My bad. I forgot to sit at the church's site of grace. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a quick switch to my equipment to pull out the longbow and put in the short bow. And you'll notice just at the top, over top of where my flask is, there is now a new name called Barrage. And that is the skill of the short bow. Now, what it allows you to do, and I'll actually show you here in a second as soon as I get to the Site of Grace, because then I can sit at it, and it is going to... Okay, one thing I forgot to mention. Ashes of War skills require focus points, magic, mana. The Mighty Shot was the one that we used from the longbow. For the short bow, very, very quick shots. I can now sit at the Site of Grace, and my magic has been restored. Okay. Now, next thing that we're going to do is we are going to head to a set of ruins and a grace point where we're going to get our horse. We're also going to kill some soldiers here. So we're going to do this in a very stealthy way, which is pretty typical of an archer. An archer cannot always stay at distance. They try, but not always can it be done. So, in those times when you can't, this is where, at least for now, the katana comes into play. Nice single backstab. I'm just going to clear out some of these soldiers for no other reason, really, than to get their runes. Now, one of the things that I will call out here in this video series is that I am not doing a tremendous amount of exploration. I know where the caves are, I know where the catacombs are, I know where the bosses are in this area. I want you to find them on your own. This is just a way for you to get started quickly using this particular build. It is not meant to show you every single... And I messed up. But you can get away from them. And there we go. I find stealth to be one of the greatest additions to the FromSoft games. They added it into Sekiro, although they didn't really take advantage of it, I don't think, as well as they should have. By the way, if you should ever see any of these glowing skulls, roll over top of them, and you get a free golden rune. It's only worth 200, but you collect enough of them, it equals up to a nice level. Okay. So we cleared out the area. The next thing is to go to the next Site of Grace and get access to our horse. So we run here along the wall, and you'll see there's a set of ruins here. We're going to clear those ruins, and we're going to get the chest that they're protecting. We don't have to. What's in that chest is actually not important to us. But it gets us runes that we can use for leveling up. So let's go ahead and sit at our Site of Grace. And I'm going to let you listen to this on your own. But this is where we get access to our horse.
Have you? They serve, but I can play turning to aid you. You need own to the foot. Then it's settled. Summon me. I bequeath.
Basically, she allows you to level up. She gives you the ability to level up. She also gives us access to the horse.
It will summon torrent. Treat him with...
Okay, I'm going to pass time until morning. Things happen at night. That's all I'm going to say to you. That don't happen during the day. Okay, first thing... I did it again. First thing is... I am going to put... No. My steed whistle in that location. So now whenever I hit Y, I can actually pull up the D-pad and call up my horse. The next thing is I'm going to start taking out all these soldiers. And I'm going to do this, the stealth mechanic, again because of the fact that I have limited arrows. But if I do accidentally aggro an enemy, then I will make sure to pull out my bow then. Now, keep that jump move in mind for people who do have shields, because once we get our real secondary weapon for the build, that will come in very handy, because it will stagger them, remove the shield, and allow you to finally do damage. Alright, I'm going to sit here and wait for this guy walking down the road to turn around so that I can, or get to his endpoint so that I can backstab him. Again, only reason I'm doing this is because I'm low on arrows. If I had plenty of arrows and plenty of runes to buy them with, then that would be a different story. Another glowing skull. Alright, now, the next thing that we absolutely needed to do here, no matter what, was to get this item right here. That is a map piece. You are going to find map pieces throughout the world. They will help you, let you know where you're going, really, to be honest. So it's important that you find them, and we will absolutely be collecting them as we go. And you notice I am going to the back of these caravans. The caravans were something that were shown in all of the promotional material that came out for the game. They all hide something. Each caravan is different. Alright, so we now need to go to the other side. Okay. The use of the bow to attract a individual enemy works extremely well for some particular reason, and I've tried this on numerous enemies in numerous areas around the game. Damn it, that's not what I wanted to do. Alright, I'm going to go back and hide myself, because I want to show you the right way. even when they are right next to one another, as these two just were, I can actually attract the wolf and not attract the soldier. So I'm going to wait for them to turn around and do it then. Now, because I'm hidden, he had no idea where the shots came from. Now, I did attract a couple of guys, no big deal. We'll run for it. And hide. And as long as you stay out of eye shot long enough, you'll be in good shape. One thing to notice, you did see that guy going side to side. That's going to dodge your arrows. Be aware of that. It is very, very annoying that the hitboxes of the enemies are extremely small when they start that side-to-side motion. You almost have to wait for them to stop, or, you know, be prepared for them to... Oh, crap. Be prepared for them to stop, like, kind of... There should be one more back here. We'll grab him, and then we'll get what's in the chest of the ruins. Every ruins is hiding some kind of a treasure. Some of them are very valuable. Most of them, though, will have, you know, some kind of a weapon, some kind of a spell, some kind of a Ash of War potentially. Get down to the bottom, and we have ourselves a chest. And this one happens to have an Ash of War called Storm Stomp that we could put onto our katana if we wanted to, and the whetstone. The whetstones are used for upgrading. However, because of the fact that we're going to be upgrading bows and we're going to be upgrading somber weapons, the whetstones aren't nearly as important. There are a lot of them out in the world, and they provide different abilities that you can attach, or affinities that you can attach to your weapon, thereby providing different scaling for your weapon. That is just the basic whetstone, but there's, for example, a fire whetstone. There's a magic whetstone, and so on, that provide different abilities and affinities. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I said I was going to bring this up. Here in our status, you can see all of the attack powers, all of our attributes, and so on. Because of the fact that we're going to be using bows, the dexterity is going to be the primary attribute. However, if you want to be able to take any kind of damage, you're also going to need to increase vigor over time. The somber weapon that we're going to be getting here in the next video is also is a dex-based weapon. So the very first thing we'll need to do to be able to even use that weapon is we will need to level up dex once. So we will in fact do that. And then with respect to our weapons, the short bow here, as you can see, has extremely bad scaling. This is the one big problem with being an archer. Both the short bow and long bow, as you upgrade them, the scaling will improve, but they will never improve above the letter D. D as in David, in either strength or dex. So you are always going to be doing low damage. I will talk about different ways that you can increase your damage output via talismans that can be attached in this slot. You can think of talismans much like the rings were in the original FromSoft games, but you're still never going to get the damage output that you get from great swords or anything like that. Your primary focus is going to be staying away from the enemies so that you can continuously do damage without having to worry about being hit. Alright, now that we've got our whetstone and we've cleared the ruins, let's go get our first... Actually, there is a grace point that we want to get right up here. Then we're going to go get our first set of upgrade materials beyond what we got at the church. We're going to be going up to Storm Hill, which is right up there. Get back on my horse to make this a little bit faster. One of the things this game provides is these air pockets that you can see right here that will allow you to jump higher. Also called a spirit spring. Whee! Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get myself to a safe place so that I can get a view on where the materials are that I was talking about. Alright, so right up here, you can see a statue that's glowing. That is going to, if it breaks open, which we can trigger by one of the trolls walking around, it will provide a large number of smithing materials. Unfortunately, we can't break it open ourselves. Come on, dude, turn around. Okay. Now we just run around. There we go. Now, the one thing, they can shoot out air pockets. So you are going to need to run around a little bit. There is a shack here with a site of grace, so we'll jump off for that. There's also another shining... By the way, these shining skulls are random. They just show up. I've actually seen them appear on the map. Alright, so we're going to talk to this guy. This guy sells Ashes of War, but none that are available for the bow. So really only thing you need to worry about is if you want to use a secondary weapon That is not a somber weapon.
Yes, takes me back. Any interest? All I know. Now's the time.
So as you can see, there's a large number of Ashes of War that he provides, but they all attach to either shields or swords of some kind. Okay,
Not floating your
we're going to
boat.
get ourselves to our stopping point here at the end of this video, which is Stormhill Shack. And what we'll do is we'll bring up the map. And it should be right about there. The map provides a lot of great information, so make sure that you're aware of that. Not only does it show all of the sites of grace that we have sat at, but it also provides you some additional information. So, for example, that merchant that we talked to that sold us the short bow is here on the map, Nomadic Merchant. That's one of the reasons why, in a future video, we're going to be going and getting and just talking to a bunch of merchants in a very, very dangerous area so that we can get access to them later. These bright cave-like locations. These are caves. It's not the only types of caves that are available, but caves that have upgrade materials. We'll be visiting them later, but once you see them on your map, keep them in mind. You'll notice there's another cave right there. This is an actual cave that has a site of grace in it. I didn't go inside of it, but it is there. We walked right by it, so therefore it showed up on our map. Additional hotspots will show up from time to time, especially as we add in additional sections to the map. There will also be, we can't see one at the moment, but there will also be in the big brown, undefined areas, a little icon that lets us know where a map piece happens to be located. And I'll point that out in the next video. Alright, so let's go ahead and make it to Stormhill Shack. And that'll be a good stopping point. Who's shooting at me? Alright, so this is going to be our stopping spot for the end of this video. A couple of things to talk about. First is this item up here, if I remember correctly, is a stone sword key. There are going to be certain areas of certain dungeons that can only be opened via stone sword keys. Some take one, some take two. So whenever you see one, grab it, keep a hold of it. There's usually a special item behind the fog wall that's being protected by the stone sword key. The next thing is this young lady right here is very important. I'm not going to tell you why, but make sure that you talk to her all the way through her conversation path, and she will end up She will end up in the central area of the game, much like the Firelink Shrine is in Dark Souls 3, Majula in Dark Souls 2. She will end up in that location, and we'll get there at some point in the near future.
Everyone.
I'm not gonna. I'll let you listen to her conversation.
You're all like heading to some entice while that, but I don't have. It's scary. I want to. I'm nothing. Oh, can you tell?
So she gives you your first ash. This is a summon ash. If this is your first playthrough of the game, learn to use them. Don't be stubborn. Learn to use them. Try the bosses without them first. 5, 10 times. But if you start to struggle, figure out what ash is best for you. You're going to collect a lot of different ashes over your playthrough. I'm 90 hours into the game and I have not even come remotely close to collecting them all. But find what ashes work for you and use them whenever you feel frustrated or whenever you feel like you have to. So she gives you the first one.
Braver than, and the spirits look like they'll be glad if you were willing to. It was a pleasure. Oh, tell them I am fine again.
Okay. That should be the end. Yes, that is the end of her conversation. There is a secondary reason for finishing off her conversation. The next time you come back here, she will be gone, and she will have dropped a golden seed. So if you want to max out on the number of flasks that you have, it's important that you talk to her all the way through her conversation path. Okay. We're going to sit here at our site of grace. We're going to level up so that we can actually use the weapon that we're going to get in the next video. We're going to level up our dexterity to 16. And as you just noticed, me leveling up dexterity, which is the primary stat for bows, only upped the pointage of damage for the sword by 1 point. It didn't even increase the damage for the bow because the damage scaling is so bad. Over time, it will improve, but not tremendously so. And as I said, I have plans in this video series for you to be able to increase your damage output using a talisman. So, this is where we're going to wrap up this video. In the next video, we're going to go to a completely new area of the map, and we're going to do nothing but collecting stuff that is out in the world. We're going to be getting our somber weapon to replace the katana, and we're going to be getting a crap ton of upgrade materials that we'll be able to use to increase the level of our short bow, our longbow, and the somber weapon that we'll be picking up. Plus, we're going to be adding to the map, which is always fun. So I'll see you in the next video.